Welcome to today's Corporate Venturing Insider series. Today, I am so happy to have Sophie with us. She's going to give you what I would say a full spectrum of understanding of corporate venturing. I don't mean to give too much pressure on you, Sophie, but welcome.
Thank you, Nicolas, for having me. And I'm joining from London. Beautiful autumn. Glad to be here with you today.
And we agreed to have this podcast in English and not French.
Yes. Oui,
Very
oui,
nice.
oui.
Merci. So, if you don't mind, maybe sharing your journey into corporate venturing, especially the wide range of experiences you have had.
Yes, thank you. So, really, the driver for me has always been to make an impact for people and for the planet. And I have two teenagers at home, and they say, "Mum, what are you doing for future generations?" So I'm very glad that right now I'm really focused on accelerating the decarbonization of mobility.
You have a good answer.
Yes, I do. As a global partnership director for BP Pulse, we are the EV charging business of BP. And this role has a component very close to corporate venturing in terms of collaboration, strategic collaboration with startups, as well as decision on acquisition, minority investments. But really, my journey in corporate venturing, I think I started as a young person because I really loved math, and I continued to love math, and so I studied university and studied telecom. With telecom, specifically digital signal processing, neural networks, and AI. So this is the mid 90s. We don't call it AI, it's called neural networks. And I think I will become an academic. And I go to Australia. I work for the CSIRO, which is the research center in Australia on image processing. And then I have the opportunity to go and work in Spain at the Universidad Politécnica de Madrid, same in neural networks, and I become impatient. I have the feeling that I'm really working on fantastic opportunities to classify images, but it will take 7 years before this can be actually implemented on computers. And I decide to join a startup at its very beginning. Um, but in reality, what I thought would take 7 years took 14 years for Google when they launched the first image classification search engine. So I was quite right to be impatient back then. So I joined a new provider of digital television by satellite, very beginning. And in less than 4 years, we went from 1 to 1 million, well, zero to 1 million subscribers, from one employee to 1,000 employees. And also, we used 7 transponders on the satellite. So this super fast growth in a startup, very technical, is something that I believe from inside. And the company eventually was acquired by a global media group. And back then, I had a very technical job. You can imagine coming from research background. I was in charge of the encoding of the TV signals and the access control and the interactivity. So very techy. And I felt that it was very important to understand a little bit more and learn more about strategy and finance to continue to make this positive impact I've always wanted to make. So I had the opportunity to join a strategy consulting firm. I did their internal MBA, learned a lot about corporate finance, and had the privilege to be approached to join a corporate venture capital firm that was part of a bank. And this group was preparing their spin out. They were moving from CVC to independent financial VC, and they were looking for someone who really understood digital image. That was in the early 2000s when everything was becoming digital image with YouTube and digital advertising and digital photography. So I joined a CVC, knowing it would become an institutional VC with a very techy background, as a specialist in digital image processing, and also knowing a little bit about strategy and about finance. So that was a good start. And really, I had the opportunity to manage with my partners in the fund purely financial funds, as well as new generations of funds with corporate investors. So we had a multi-corporate fund investing in early stage companies in mainland Europe, and then also multi-corporate fund and financial fund investing in Asia and in the US. I also was invited to be on the investment committee of an early stage multi-corporate fund in Germany, investing in B2B enterprise software. So I really saw as a financial investor how corporate VC and expect the financial LPs to deliver value to the mothership. And some of our investments were extremely successful, returning very good financial returns. And for the corporates, it was very important to have access to innovation, of course, have this level of financial returns, but also the element of the reputation for the corporate VC being associated with financial funds delivering the right value, delivering the right message on the market was also key. So I had the opportunity after 15 years with this fund to move to the UK and join this time a purely corporate venture capital firm, Munich Re, the largest reinsurer in the world, and really running the operations in Europe with the rest of the team in San Francisco. Very thoughtful in the way the investment thesis was built by this corporate fund, thinking we as a large reinsurer are going to develop new reinsurance products, new risk transfer products, and the startups are going to be our clients. They are going to use our risk transfer products. They are going to use the guarantee of the performance of their products so that the startup can sell to customers. Also, we as a big corporate are going to be the distribution channel, or all the startups are going to open new distribution channels for us. So really um, a very strong approach with being a long-term shareholder. Reinsurance is a long-term activity, and so right,
Yep.
making risky decisions, understanding the amount of the risk and how to mitigate the risk, very core to reinsurance as well. Um, in some cases, the fund decided to be on the board of the investment companies. Not always. Sometimes a board director, sometimes an observer, sometimes just a value add shareholder. And of course, this element of having a commercial collaboration with each startup in the portfolio company, that was absolutely key. And then after this wonderful opportunity, my teenagers again saying, "What are you doing? Well, the climate is going where we don't want it to go." So when I was approached by BP to join their clean energy activities, and bring this expertise I had in financial VC as well as corporate VC and my operational background, having worked in a startup, I thought it was a great moment to help with climate and really making a positive impact on the planet here.
It nearly feels like all your experience lead to this perfect job for you today.
So I think yes, it's every time I had a job, I felt it was the best job at the time. I think what is very important is the wonder, being like seeing wonder in terms of innovation, in terms of the smartest people, The latest innovation and opportunity to industrialize, and opportunity to bring to scale what technology and people have the best to bring. So yes, definitely. Right now, I think being in climate tech is the right thing to do for me with my background.
Very nice. So I think for the audience now, they can understand what I meant. You've been, of course, a technical background, very technical, then an entrepreneur in a fast growth company that was successfully acquired. You've been into the CVC that became very quickly a VC, but working, I'm sure, with corporates and LPs that are corporates. And then you move to one of the best CVC, by the way, which is Munich Re. And if we think about a good VC's job is to do risk-adjusted pricing, and reinsurance business is really all about risk-adjusted pricing, but of course at very different scale. And now you're in charge of partnerships with startups. So I think we have such a wide spectrum of questions. I'm going to double click first on earlier journey, but then we will, I'm sure, talk about many things. So can you first share how your technical background, very, very technical, one of the best school in France, you were humble not to mention, but one of the best, if actually probably the best in telecom. How much of that scientific and technical background helps you even today?
Yeah, so it continues to help me today, almost on an everyday basis. I think for three reasons. The number one is the disciplined, structured approach of taking a complex problem and breaking down into smaller problems and just tackle each problem after the other one. So that's the engineering background that you were mentioning. The second one is really because it helps create trust with new partners, with colleagues in new markets, because having a single source of truth based on a common understanding of a scientific or technical topic actually creates trust in an uncertain environment, and we are definitely in an uncertain environment. um, and the third one is because I am working in areas where part of the solution comes from a technical solution as well as a human solution, as well as finding the right financing and understanding the right time to market. So there's I would say, the intellectual structure, how to approach a complex problem. There's creating bridge and common language and trust with an ecosystem of individuals and stakeholders. And fundamentally, we need tech to solve some of these challenges. Yeah.
So that's for the intellectual structure, but there are two words you said earlier on, which I loved because it's about the feelings. One was about being impatient, and one was a sense of wonder. And I feel like this is like the perfect yin and yang. You need the intellectual, but you also need this kind of emotional aspects. Can you share about the sense of urgency or impatience you mentioned, as well as a wonder, which I think is probably linked to some kind of curiosity? Can you share about why that makes you a good investor?
So, so impatient, I must say, every day I work on my patience.
I'm the same. Actually, I have this 8 words concept, and three of my 8 words is about patience and impatience, and knowing which one I should apply for a different case. So I'm glad you said the same.
Absolutely. So it's really about being impatient when it's the right time to be impatient. Move at pace, and being patient, especially if we are too early vis-a-vis a market trend, or a market that matures. So um, quick, let's be ready, and then be patient and have the right signal, the right market signal to launch the product. There's so many fantastic ideas that were launched too early.
Yeah, and
So,
and and sometimes, so maybe you could comment. How do you see people saying VC should be patient capital?
so VC should be patient capital when it comes to the J curve of the valuation of a startup. That's the J curve, which is the first years are years of investment, are years of finalizing, if it's a Series A, finalizing the first strong product. If it's Series B, is finding the right product market fit. If it's Series C, it's about launching new countries or diversifying new products. So each step happens at a certain moment in time, and that means more investment before this turns into value creation for the startup. Impatient, because as soon as an experiment or a trial fails, just learn from that. Do we double down, or do we just say, not for us right now, let's focus on something else? So impatient to get the learning in order to identify if that was the wrong decision. No problem at all. Just adapt. That's something about being impatient with being adaptable, and also being patient with being resilient, and acknowledging that the value of a company, of a startup, as the shape of a J curve.
It's an amazing golden nugget. I like to say that for me, patience is about a sense of purpose. You're doing the right thing, and you know you're going to need time to go through the J curve, the right unit economics, the right scaling, and everything. But the impatience is about this sense of urgency. Let's not wait until we learn something doesn't work, and let's make sure we fix what we can fix. And so, with that, let's talk about fast growth. So, you were in a startup. What do you remember from that experience of very fast growth? I mean, people talk to 0 to 1, but for you it was 0 to 1 million subscribers, uh, and 1 to 1,000 employees. So can you share about what that experience gave you as an investor, but also maybe some of the biases? Because if that was your one experience, that's kind of a bias as well.
Yes. So this hyper growth during 4 years happened as a consequence of months, if not years, of preparation. I joined day one. All the preparation, most of the preparation had been done before. So I have to be very, very open. I joined a team that had a vision, and it was about execution.
So product market fit was there, scaling was a key mission.
So product market fit was extremely well thought. It was really about having a product with unique content, and one of the unique content was access to the national television that were not accessible in certain geographies. The only way for people to receive this television was to have a dish, a satellite dish.
I remember that time.
And so ensuring that this content would be available on our platform, and only our platform, gave us a sustainable competitive advantage, almost unfair competitive advantage. The regulator accepted that we would start with this unfair competitive advantage because the only existing player was in a de facto monopoly. The
Yep.
regulator really acknowledged the need for a challenger, and then accepted this unfair competitive advantage. It was much more than an idea, right? So, okay, that's the idea. We're going to secure unique content. Now,
Yep.
how do we ensure we have the best team to deliver? We're going to have these people who have worked together in the past, but also these people who have never worked together in the past. It's going to be constructive, challenging. It's not going to be a walk in the park. I can give you an example. When we launched, it was specifically on a specific date, and all the journalists were invited, and it was a big event in a big venue. Guess what? the satellite we were going to use was not in its orbit. It was late. It was late. It was still moving.
Not something you control.
So and we no way we're going to postpone and wait another few days. Everything is there, marketing, everything. We worked collaboratively with the provider of the operator of the satellite and say, please, can you delay the satellite just for those 3 hours during which we're going to make a demonstration, a demo in front of the journalists? Then we stop the demo, you continue the journey of your satellite, and the first customers are going to have access to the set-top boxes and the cards in 1 week. So we still have 1 week to bring the satellite at the right orbit.
Yeah.
We did that. So,
No
so
way.
it's that's execution, right? This is the creativity. Everybody was aligned towards having this wonderful product and being determined to be creative and work collaboratively every time there was a roadblock. Another roadblock. One of the supplier of the set-top box had a supply chain constraint. So we decided to call in emergency a new provider of set-top boxes, completely unproven. But we worked day and night with this supplier for a small batch of set-top boxes that would be available for early customers. Um, this was constant firefighting. Um,
Okay. But that back to my question about bias. I mean, it was perfect product market fit. It was unfair competitive advantage with regulators. It was an amazing team assembled from people who are experienced on that, constructive conflict mindset, thinking outside the box. How does that create a bias or not for future startups you look at as an investor?
so So the bias is that this is not easy to succeed. Number one, this is not easy. Um, and number two, people first. Ideas are easy to have. Implementation and fine tuning and being creative in front of roadblocks. This is what makes the difference. And the third one is patience, because because subscriber growth was not linear. It was more to the square, right? Or to the
Yeah, exponential. Yeah.
exactly.
But it looks flat at the beginning.
Yes, and you're like, oh my god, I'm detaining. I'm just asking the satellite to stay there. I'm investing so much in movies, paying minimum guarantees to the big media companies, and we're not even covering our cost because we don't have enough customers, and we're paying high price for James Bond movies. But that was investment. So the J curve in the value, in the equity value, and the flat curve on the subscribers growth, all well invested for an accelerated growth after. So this moment of preparation, launch, patient investment, knowing exactly what we're saying, Nicolas, we are doing the right thing.
That's so cool. So one thing you also said proactively is about the value of constructive conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And here I feel like there is a golden nugget. And everything you've described means that you have clear empathy for the entrepreneurs. You understand what they are going through and all the challenges. But can we maybe zoom on the constructive conflict? Is there any best practice you've seen both from engaging in constructive conflict, but also in helping entrepreneurs understand the value of constructive conflict for their own projects?
Absolutely. And constructive conflict is the quintessence of a well functioning, high performing board, in fact. And it also happens before, after, around the board, but really this is where you see if it works or not. So there are some prerequisites. The founder has to be very good at communicating, at explaining to the shareholder, whether it's a corporate investor or a financial investor or other board members, what is it that he is building? What is his vision? What is his plan? What are the milestones? The corporate investor, to give the example of corporate investor, because this is a podcast of corporate investor, it's important to take the time to understand the business. It's important to talk the same language, the same vocabulary, the same words. Because I will assume my job as an investor is to understand what the founder wants to achieve and help this happen. Um, and therefore, first, I need to ensure that if I give advice, this is going to be useful, this is going to be of value because this is tailored to what the company is building, to what the founder's vision is. So, constructive feedback starts with a lot of listening, a lot of learning, and sometimes it requires a lot of conversation with other shareholders, other board members before going and having this challenge with the CEO. Some people prefer to go directly to the CEO, have one on one and constructive. This is usually very valuable for ad hoc help, key hires, or specific advisors. This is, I would say,
Content.
content, exactly. When it comes to the value a corporate VC can bring to a company, this is really broad. They come with wonderful industry expertise and experience, extremely good at some industrial processes, supply chains, or key metrics, what good looks like in this industry. In order to make all this knowledge useful to the CEO and the founder, this needs to be translated, adapted to the specific case of this small startup. Um, and so the constructive challenge is a consequence of this good level of communication between the investor and the CEO.
And I think you're setting a good framework in terms of constructive feedback, constructive conflict as a way of optimizing decision making in complex environment with high level of uncertainty. But sometimes this difficult feedback you give to the entrepreneurs could be tainted, even if unfairly, depending on your position, whether you're a board member, whether you're an observer, because of the CVC behind. So maybe I want to go into the granularity of the different engagements that entrepreneurs will see from a CVC investor, because we have the shareholder, we have the board, we have commercial engagements. Do you mind walking through the three levels, but also how to think about each of them from the entrepreneur's point of view?
Yes, wonderful. So exactly. So I will take an example of a company that previous one has invested in, where the three levels were brilliantly activated. I would say um, the first level started with actually the commercial collaboration. So very commercial, all about the corporate creating a new category of product for a new type of customer that this startup was able to approach.
So very strategic.
Very strategic.
Okay.
Startup being a new distribution channel for a new category of users of a product that the corporate developed. I think this is what TDK Ventures you're also doing, right? With the
Oh,
component.
absolutely. We have a mission of explorations about the mega trends TDK wants to go into, but doesn't have product, doesn't have technology, doesn't are not in the market. So it's all about learning about these big mega trends and learning how to engage. And very much like you described, it could be customer type, partner type, supplier type, all of the gamut.
Exactly. Exactly. So let's say purely commercial to start with. This element has to be strong by itself, has to stand on its legs by itself. The moment there's the thinking that the corporate should invest in the startup to subsidize the commercial agreement, or we are going to make such a wonderful commercial contract with the startup that it's going to subsidize even if we lose everything from our shareholders. This is the beginning of the trouble. Level of the commercial is strong by itself.
Can you explain why? Because I think everyone in the audience will probably say yes, of course, but actually it's not that obvious.
So the because the value and also the time
That's
that
it.
goes in this commercial agreement is usually short term, like 1, 2, 3 years. Short term when it comes to venture capital scheme, venture capital thinking. Venture capital shareholder in a startup means non-liquid investments, means J curve of equity valuation, means 5, 7, 10 years between the moment I invest and the moment I exit the company, hopefully with
Yeah.
a value. Then, exactly, with this commercial relationship, the startups start to have this unfair competitive advantage. They go to market and they can sell their product because it embeds our own product. And they have the brand association. This startup is associated with the brand of this strong corporate. This must be a wonderful product. And so the shareholder might think, the corporate might think, I would like to have access to the equity appreciation. I am a key a key element of the success of this startup, and I would like to learn more about their market, about their product. Therefore, I'm making this financial driven and strategic driven investment as a shareholder.
Mm.
Even if the commercial agreement stops, I still need to be strongly a believer in the value of the startup itself. It's now a shareholder decision. I think that this company is going to go from a valuation of 10 to 100. I'm going to make my multiple 10 on my early stage investment. And why am I investing in this company? Because I think I will bring value. I think I will help them expand in new markets because I've got presence in these geographies where these customers also might might buy this product. Or I think I'm going to help with access to expertise for the next generation of the product of the startup.
So I want to pause here because there's a golden nugget, which is you're not describing what we get to the corporate. You're talking about what the corporate give to increase the odds of success to that startup.
Because the more the startup is successful, the more I'm going to learn and the more I'm going to have an appreciation of the value of the shareholder.
That is a golden nugget. Because most CVCs who are starting with little experience all think about what do we get
Mhm.
versus how do we help the startup be successful and we grow with them. So I really wanted to pause on that key point you just made.
Yes, and it's when it's very successful, both get and give. And so that brings to the level of the board. To sit or not to sit on the board? That is the question for the corporate VC. And here again, I will take the perspective of the founder. As a founder, I want to work with the best of the best.
Hmm.
I want a board that usually has 5 to 7 members. More than this, it becomes quite inefficient, a lot of noise. Less than this, it can become a little bit conflictual because there are too few people. So five, let's say 5, 7. Early stage company, usually the leader of the rounds will ask for a board seat. If the corporate leads the round, then it's absolutely common practice to have a board as a representative of the main shareholder It's
Mm.
very important to take this seat also as a value add investor. And especially, I would say we've talked a lot about the industry experience and expertise and the access to distribution, experts in the company. I would highly encourage that the person from the corporate who takes the board seat has a strong financial acumen. The board of a startup, whether it's seed A, B, C, will talk a lot about financial metrics. We'll spend a lot of time thinking about the next round. What milestones do we need to achieve in order to attract the next generation of investors? And so, to be on the board, not to be on the board, what is the strategy of the CVC? Is it purely strategic? Is it purely financial? Is it both strategic and financial? If there is no financial objective in this first CVC, for example, I would strongly encourage to bring a lot of expertise from former entrepreneurs or purely financial investors at the board. The risk sitting on the board when you're a corporate VC is because you're so passionate about innovation, about learning from the company and sharing everything with the company, is that this element of cash, of finance, becomes a second level on the second priority. And we all know cash is king in with startups. So
Actually, last week I saw a sentence which was very strong: cash first, profit next. So,
yes, yes.
but so maybe a double click before we proceed to the shareholder, which is sit or not sit on the board, but there are two levels of board. You can be a full board member or an observer. And for the entrepreneurs, that might look like the same thing. They come to the same meetings, they listen to the same thing, apart from voting, which typically is unanimous, no difference. Actually, there's a major difference. Do you mind sharing what it is and how to think about it from both the mothership this time and the startup?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm also curious to hear your perspective on the difference.
Okay. I
Yeah.
typically have the questions, but I'm happy to engage.
Yes. So, so what I can talk about my own experience. I've been board observer. I've been board director. I've always approached the role of being on the board at the same level of bringing value, listening to the different members, really working well, creating chemistry, creating bridges between the corporate and the startup. There is an element in terms to your point in terms of the decision. There's also an element in terms of fiduciary duty. There's an element in terms of legal obligations. And responsibilities.
Yeah.
So my immediate reaction would be take take a little bit of a training on how to be a board member before you take a fully voting director seat.
Yeah.
It will help with knowing what processes are needed in a board. It will help with ensuring that the board spends enough time on the right topics. So, unless at the board there is someone who is an experienced board member, sometimes the chairman is an experienced board member. They can come with this knowledge of processes and how the subcommittees work, and it's still good to have the right level of training. And there are wonderful trainings organized by the venture capital associations and also association for corporate VCs.
Yeah. So first I agree. First, training is number one because it's a very big responsibility to be on the board, even as an observer. So you want to have that training to make sure that the hygiene is there. What we've implemented at TDK Ventures actually is that when an investment director takes a board seat, we ask the entrepreneur if they are open for one of our more junior investment team members to join as an apprentice. Purely the fly on the wall, they don't talk, they just listen, they understand what's happening, and when they accept, this is great because it gives that uh, junior investment team members to learn about the dynamics and things. But then at the end of it, the investment director will then spend time with that junior person saying, what did you learn? What did you observe? And start sharing about why they didn't say something at a certain point or why they interacted at another point. And so I see it as an opportunity for our investment team members who are more junior to really experience before being thrown into a board. And then on the observer versus being a full board member, here we are very strict. First, the fiduciary duty is to the startup when you're a full board member. And here, what I'm basically telling my team, and we have a code of conduct in TDK Ventures, and the E stands for entrepreneurs first. So here, what I always tell them is, even though you would be an observer with a fiduciary duty to TDK Ventures and TDK, I want you to keep our core value alive, which is you're looking at the entrepreneurs first, you're looking at the startup first. But that's how we think about it at TDK Ventures, which may be different depending on different companies and mothership. And I can imagine a CVC whose job is exploration like us is easier. If it's an exploitation mission where it's about finding the next customer or people coming onto the platform, then it probably is more difficult to be a full board member.
Yes, I certainly see this, and I think even if one is a junior observer, they should endeavor to bring value to the board. It can be just taking notes. Of course, now
Yep.
AI take notes, but I mean, doing
Actually, they
some
do.
research.
So if I share my experience, one is they take the notes. Two, at the end, during the brainstorm, they might have ideas. And when they do, we ask them to actually write to the CEO and saying, hey, this is what I saw during the board.
Yes.
And actually, we have Valentin, one of our uh, investment analysts, that is an apprentice on the board. I am the board member for Faction, and he brought a really good idea at some point, and it became implemented. You can imagine how good he feels about it.
This is fantastic. And also having board observer do market research or come with benchmarks or do a some interviews, everything all well understood. Of course, it's about providing a very skilled resource to do some valuable work for the board and for the startup. So I'm also a big fan of learning from others and having um, different seniority, different background on the board, help each other learn from each other. And personally, my first board, I was quite young. I was in the mid 30s. I was a shareholder. It was a shareholder seat, and I was lucky to learn with people experienced in being a board member. And I remember vividly. I really focused on what I would bring value on, which were two things. One was because I was very techy and the startup was doing image processing for security of traffic and transportation. So I
Yep.
knew really well the type of coding language and the type of product architecture that this company was developing. So I sat down with the CTO and really tried to understand and really created a bridge. Um, the CTO was not on the board, but I was on the board and working with the CTO, so
Yep.
creating a bridge there. And the other element was a looping back with finance. Is it feasible? What was the cost? How long? So really being a technical expert at the board, but really listening to how the different people would interact, say a comment, do not say a comment,
Yep.
take offline, take inline. So I think it takes 7 years to learn how to become VC because 7 years is usually the full cycle between
Yep.
investment and exit. That was
Yep.
that was slightly shorter a few years ago when there were a lot of exits during
it may be much longer now.
And now it's much longer. Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
So we talked about commercial engagements and being on the board. Now let's talk about shareholder and how that is even different with board.
So shareholder is really either I want to make a financial return as a financial shareholder. I want to make a return on the innovation I'm going to learn. So the shareholder will have a clear picture of what good looks like for this investment. What
Mm,
are the key metrics that will measure my success? Is it financial? Is it financial? So, or strategic? Is it aligned with the interest of the startup? And this is something I really love about my job right now. It's all about creating alignment between the corporate and the startups. The best alignment is the more the startup succeeds, the more the corporate succeeds.
yeah.
This is why it is so delicate, I would say, to find the right dynamic shareholder, board member, commercial partner when the corporate is the client of the
Mm,
startup.
yeah.
Because if I am the client of the startup as a corporate, as a shareholder, yes, I would like my investment to return really good value, but I would like to be exclusive in using this product. I don't want my competitors to use this same product because I want to keep my unique competitive advantage. And I want to pay the lowest price for this product because I want to be very mindful and
So as
optimal.
a shareholder and commercial engagements, of course, but as a board member,
This is where the board member can be very very helpful here, creating this bridge, creating this alignment of interest between the interest of the shareholder and the interest of the commercial partner in the corporate. So as a shareholder, it is important to know what is my investment thesis. What is my investment thesis? What is my time scale? Do I want quick returns because there's a change in strategy or because there's there's a need for cash optimization? Am I more a long-term investor? Am I looking to create an ecosystem around my product as a corporate? Am I trying to open new distribution channels? It requires much more thorough thinking to position the corporate as a very clearly well positioned shareholder than I would say on the commercial level.
and of course, strategy can change over time. So even though you might start with a beautiful alignment, things can start to tilt.
Yes, absolutely. And things can start to tilt. And this is why some corporate, they will at some point decide to outsource the activity, their corporate venture capital activities to a independent team. This independent team can have people from the corporate and just to ensure that there's a time scale for this fund that is different than the time scale that the corporate has to keep vis-a-vis its own shareholders, its own market, if the corporate is a listed company.
Now, for the entrepreneurs who are listening in the audience, how should they think about a CVC coming onto their cap table with a sizable check, which could justify a full board membership, and whether they should think about them joining as a full board member, as an observer? How should they react if the CVC proposed someone from the mothership versus from the CVC team? Can you walk us through what the entrepreneur should be asking?
So Yes, and the entrepreneur can ask and should ask different things at different stages and of the company. And the entrepreneur will want the best of the best, and they will want to move fast. They will want access to clients. They will want access to expertise. They will want to open in different geographies with all these possibilities that the corporate can offer. Um, I would encourage the founder to really understand well the investment thesis, the positioning of the corporate fund, and have an open conversation with the fund manager and also with the business unit that is sponsoring the investment in the startup. Usually, there's the business unit. There's a senior executive who will sponsor the investment in the startup. Really, those three entities, the CEO and the startup one, the corporate VC, and the business unit, this triangle, they have one objective: top line growth, success. And so together, figuring out who is the best person to help the company grow, who are the best person, and in what role.
Now, something you mentioned much earlier in the interview is reputation. And I think that's probably so important for corporate VCs. Many corporate VCs in the past had bad practices that gave a bad rep for every CVCs, even though you talked about Munich Ray, a great CVC, and many are very good CVCs. So when we talk about reputation and brand building, how should a CVC and their mothership think about best practices for commercial engagement with a portfolio company?
So it's really about being thoughtful about what are the assets of the corporate that, as a CVC, I can bring to the startup.
Oh, I love it.
Usually it's one, two, three assets maximum. Having said that, I think part of the reputation of what we've seen in the market with CVCs was due to tourism, putting one ticket at one round and then not being there for the next round,
Or disappear. Yeah.
disappear, or even not being there to sign documents, or jumping from one board to another one and asking random questions. So, so it's really, this is now behind us. I think there's now a lot of a lot of knowledge, a lot of good practices. It goes also with individuals. Some individuals who've had um, a very successful track record in the way they they care about the startup they invest in. They genuinely care. They will genuinely
Mhm.
spend time. They will
Mm.
genuinely do the extra mile to find the person in their organization with the right level of influence, the right level of experience and network to help. So there's an element of individual as well. Who do you have in your corporate VC, and do they really care about the startups they invest in?
Now, sometimes the team in the CVC really intend well and they do want to do well, but there are some constraints or change of management in the mothership that creates lack of support for a CVC. So if you're the entrepreneur, you should, and this is really good because you've done financial VC and corporate VC. How should an entrepreneur think differently between a VC and a CVC as investors? Because they bring very different profiles and superpowers.
Yes. So CVC delivering financial returns or just break even, this is a first element of reassurance for the founders. Um, Best of the best, the corporate VC brings financial value, strategic value. Even if the strategy fluctuates, the financial return is here and really stabilizes the CVC itself. So that's one very important element. Now, in the early days of a CVC, just starting or the first years, the returns are not there yet. The portfolio has to prove itself. Where I've seen very successful programs is where the CVC program was close to a stable member of the executive committee or stable CEO. It comes with the stability of the decision makers or the sponsor at the very top level of the corporate. Either you, you can live without this stability because the financial stability that gives the CVC fund, ideally you have both stability in the strategy and stability in the financial returns. But yes.
I'm going to ask you a fun question for the last question. Let's say your next job, and this is just abstract, but your next job is you join to be the CEO of a public company in mobility. Let's say $50 billion revenue per year. They don't have a CVC. They might have a CVC in the past, but they don't have a CVC now. How would you think about having a CVC or not? And how would you think about constructing that CVC, assuming that this mobility company is struggling with innovation, but is doing really well on the core product?
Mm-hmm. So I would definitely have a CVC program.
Okay, that's good.
And
That's a good.
definitely on probably one or two verticals.
Hmm.
I will have a very well defined investment thesis. I don't expect to do all innovation with my CVC. I'm just going to look at two areas or three areas that are, are quite disrupted by new players. I need to understand because this might disrupt my own activity.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to make very disciplined investment with a financial return mindset, but on these verticals. Why does it make sense? Because these are new verticals disrupted by new technologies or new regulations with a potential big market. So startups that will succeed in these verticals are going to create value, equity value, and I want to partner with these players there. So
Okay.
yes, that would be my approach.
So clear vision, clear scoping, clear strategy, and investment thesis. Now the challenge is how do you build a team? Internal, you just joined, so you don't have a network inside the company per se. You look internally, externally. How would you think about it? Because I'm sure many CEOs that comes into a company and they want to make sure they don't get disrupted too quickly, they have to make these kind of
Yes.
decisions.
So I will look at the composition of my CVC team and, as important, the bridges between the CVC team and my business. So it is absolutely fine to have my CVC team slightly separate. It can be even physically separated in a different location, just so that they can be focused on forward looking, on
Mm.
future market trends. However, the bridges between the CVC and the corporate and the business units. These are people that will come from the business.
Very nice. I think that's part of the tethering, which then can bring the value you talked about earlier.
Yes.
Sophie, thank you so much for your time. It was full of golden nuggets, and I think your range of experience shines through the podcast. So thank you
Well,
very
it's
much.
been a pleasure being interviewed by you, Nicolas, and it's a great initiative, right? Sharing knowledge, and I've personally enjoyed watching interviews with colleagues, and I hope people will enjoy watching this interview.
Thank you.
Bye bye.